Welcome back to the Elias Macco Show. A new opinion piece in the Montreal Gazette. Joe Ortona argues that Quebec's decision to scrap renovations at F.A.C.E School, a unique bilingual arts program, is a betrayal of both the school and the broader Quebec community. Let's now go to Joe Ortona, chair of the English Montreal School Board and of the Quebec English School Boards Association. Joe, welcome back to the program.
Hi. Thanks for having me on.
Let's talk about F.A.C.E School. I don't know if all of our listeners know just how special this school is, how unique it is. Why don't we lay that groundwork first? Why don't you tell our listeners about F.A.C.E School?
Well, F.A.C.E is a very unique school. It's got an arts core program. It's very popular for parents who want to put their kids in that stream, and it's a partnership. And it's been an ongoing partnership for several decades between what used to be the Commission Scolaire de Montréal and the EMSB, now the Centre de Services Scolaires and the EMSB, and it's the model example of cohabitation between both communities and how they can, work successfully to make the school what it is, which is, one of the model schools that we're really proud of.
Now, it's located in downtown Montreal. It's in a historic old building that desperately needs renovations. And the Quebec government was, a couple weeks ago, they canceled the long-promised renovations, right, to F.A.C.E School. They cited the costs. I have to admit, Joe, that when I saw the price tag, my jaw dropped. I almost can't believe how a renovation can cost $375 million. So let's get into that. Tell me about what work F.A.C.E needs and why it's going to cost so much.
Well, I wish I had the answers as to why it's costing so much, because that was never the initial cost. But F.A.C.E needs a lot of work. It's in a very old building. The work that's being done on the building right now is essentially like little patch-up jobs that aren't really taking care of, the brick and mortar, and the building is really not in good shape. Doing the work of the building requires many years of work, and we have to move the students out of that building. And for whatever reason, the costs have exploded. But, the government, I think, bears some of that responsibility to ensure that they find, construction companies that can do it at a manageable cost. I believe that there are rules in place that when a contract is awarded, you don't necessarily have to give it to the lowest bidder if the lowest bidder is unreasonably high. The other thing that's really important to consider, parents made a lot of concessions when the kids were going to be moved into separate buildings, because the buildings, for example, don't have an auditorium, they don't have a cafeteria, there's an extensive music program at F.A.C.E, the classrooms aren't necessarily soundproof, but they made those concessions because it was going to be temporary. Now they've canceled the F.A.C.E project. The kids are going to be permanently moved out of those schools and into what was supposed to be the temporary locations for the schools, and the parents are devastated, and they're right to be.
So let me ask you this, because one of the things that you bring up, and I think you should tell our listeners here, is so I get, $350 million, $375 million is a lot of money. But you bring up an example of the Quebec government very much willing to spend to fix up old buildings in other circumstances. Why don't you tell our listeners about that, and if there's a double standard being applied here?
Yeah, most definitely, and thank you for giving me that opportunity. There's the Gérard D. Lévesque building, which is where the Ministry of Finance employees work, and I'm not even sure that they work in the building 5 days a week. They probably, like most employees now, work from home 40 or 50% of the time. And the cost to renovate that building had ballooned from something like about $100 million to over $325 million now. And they're going ahead with those renovations too. So the CAQ government has betrayed parents when in the last campaign they said education was their most important dossier, And clearly that is not where they are investing, and that is not where they are prioritizing expenses.
We're with Joe Ortona from the English Montreal School Board. And Joe, that example there, a building for bureaucrats who work in Quebec City for finance, the numbers are strikingly so similar to what was the initial cost and what it's actually going to cost. There, the government seemingly no issue spending over $300 million for a building. Let's talk about the students. Let's talk about the programs here. What happens? So they're going to be in separate buildings. The things that made F.A.C.E. special, can they continue in these new facilities?
Well, of course, the principals and the staff and the EMSB and I have no doubt the CSSDM are going to make every effort to make sure that the services are going to be maintained and all of the elements that made F.A.C.E. special are going to, as much as possible, remain, and that the school can still continue to thrive. But part of what made the school special was the cohabitation between the francophones and the anglophones, and the fact that it was an elementary and high school all housed under one building. That the concerts and the orchestra was with all students, K to grade 11, and that's going to be lost now when they're going to be split in two separate buildings, and so parents are devastated by that. It will not be the same experience. I have no doubt F.A.C.E. would still be an amazing school, but it's not. It's just not going to be the same, and we should not be depriving the students of those experiences.
Can I ask you, Joe, because on the French side of things, they no longer have school boards. They have these centres de service scolaire. Do you think that on the French side, I know the parents, by the way, on the French side, the parents have been fighting, the students have been fighting, but do you think lack of having real school boards has hindered a fight, any fight against the government here on this decision?
Absolutely. Because the CSSDM now does not have elected representatives, there is nobody to speak on behalf of the parents to anybody at the ministry or to the government. Because the government can now hire the Director General of the CSSDM, and that Director General is the official spokesperson of the service center, there's nobody to speak out against what the government is doing. They are completely muzzled. So the only people that are outspoken about this is the EMSB. Just to put it in perspective, we have 25,000 students at our board. The CSSDM has about 115,000. They're 6 times our size, but we're the ones doing 100% of the advocacy for F.A.C.E. school, which is like 70% francophones. So it's really unfortunate, but it was by design. It's exactly what the government wanted. They wanted complete compliance in the education sector. What they say goes without any kind of opposition whatsoever. Thankfully, they didn't get that in the English side.
So what's going to happen with this building?
Well, first, we're hoping that the parents are going to continue to advocate. We're advocating as well. We're hoping that the government is going to consider other options. Option one is figure out how you can lower these costs and see if the work can be done to keep F.A.C.E. where it is and have them in a newer and functioning building that is up to standards. And then the parents would be very pleased to make the sacrifice to have their kids split for a few years, knowing that their kids are going to be going back where they want them to be. If that doesn't work, then they have to look at other options. There are other buildings. There are perhaps other locations that could be feasible where everybody would be able to stay together. To just turn around at the snap of a finger and say, where we promised you we would temporarily locate your kids is where we're going to permanently locate your kids now, is just unacceptable.
Joe, we do have to leave it there. I want to thank you so much for fighting the fight on our airways this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Joe Ortona is chair of the English Montreal School Board.